Bambur, the bell-born boy. In a certain old town, where cobbled streets smelled of cinnamon and rain, stood a house so peculiar that children passing by always glanced into its windows with a mix of unease and fascination. The owner of the house was Mr. Maple, an elderly clockmaker who spoke more often to the cuckoos in his clocks than to people. He wore glasses so thick that the whole world could be seen backward through them, and he always smelled of wood polish and raspberry tea. The house had 3 floors, hundreds of hidden compartments, and thousands of ticking clocks, but the most curious place was the attic. Mr. Maple never let anyone go up there. He only said, "Time doesn't like nosy noses." One day, as a storm stretched across the sky like a gray tablecloth, Mr. Maple climbed to the attic for the first time in years while tidying up. Among old trunks, cobwebs, and forgotten melodies, he found something extraordinary. It was a bell, tiny brass, with a delicate engraving of a smiling face. It hung on a string, as if it had been waiting all along for someone to touch it. "What are you then?" muttered the clockmaker and gently tapped the bell. It chimed softly, almost shyly. But then, something happened. From a dusty corner of the attic, a blue glow began to seep out, and from the shadows emerged a figure. It was a boy, small, with a heart carved from wood and eyes that sparkled like stars. He wore funny shorts with cherry stone buttons and a cap made from a chestnut leaf. "Good morning," he said with surprising confidence. "My name is Bambur. Was it you who woke me?" Mr. Maple dropped his polishing cloth. You speak?" "Of course. And I have a huge appetite for life." Bambur laughed, and his laughter sounded like 10 tiny bells ringing all at once. From that moment, everything changed. The bells in the attic fell silent, the clocks in the workshop began to tick with new hope, and Mr. Maple, though he didn't understand how, felt that his loneliness had suddenly grown legs and was now running around the room, asking 100 questions a minute. And so began the extraordinary adventure of Bambur, the bell-born boy, who was yet to discover what it truly meant to be real. The Valley of Dawn was quiet and misty that morning. When Bambur opened his wooden eyelids, he noticed a strange shadow slipping between the branches. It wasn't the wind. It was someone, or something. "Hello?" he asked softly, climbing onto a stump and peeking past the moss. Instead of a reply, he heard tick-tock, a soft, rhythmic sound coming from deep within the forest. "That's probably not a heartbeat. Maybe it's my bell again," he thought and set off toward the sound. After a few steps, he came across a peculiar creature. It wore glasses made of dewdrops and a hat fashioned from an acorn. In one hand it held a clock, and in the other, a carrot. "Who are you?" asked Bambur. "Master Tick-Tock, forest clockmaker. I fix clocks, tidy up time, and help wooden children find their souls. Can you help me find myself?" Bambur asked uncertainly. The clockmaker was silent for a moment. Then he smiled. "That's a longer journey, Bambur. But the first clue is this: to understand who you are, you must hear your own sound." Bambur glanced toward the bell, which trembled softly. But it wasn't an ordinary sound. Within it was a note of sorrow and hope. Master Tick-Tock led Bambur to his workshop hidden inside an ancient oak tree. Inside the trunk, hundreds of tiny gears spun, all powered by sunlight and leaves. Your heart may be made of wood, but your sound, your soul, can be real. In the center of the room stood a massive pendulum, crafted from crystal tears. As Bambur stepped closer to it, he suddenly heard, "You are not alone." It wasn't the voice of the clockmaker. It was the voice of his creator. Bambur felt something strange. As if someone from the past had gently touched his shoulder. It was a warm, familiar feeling. Could it be that the bell, the one he came from, had once been something more? You must find the Bell Rock, Bambur. That's where sounds speak the truth. The clockmaker handed him a small map and a compass made from a pine needle. But be careful. Sometimes what you hear can frighten you, especially if it's the voice of your own thoughts. Bambur nodded. This time, his steps were steadier. The sound of the bell was becoming clearer, as if it were leading him toward a mystery and an answer. Bambur walked through the forest, holding the map with its pine needle compass and a touch of uncertainty. Sunlight began to filter through the tree canopies, and the birds played melodies so strange it seemed as though they were learning their songs all over again. Eventually, he reached a place that looked like the end of the path, but the ground beneath his feet was trembling. From behind a curtain of moss and ferns emerged the rock, not large but oddly familiar. On its surface were the outlines of bells that no wind ever struck. Bambur approached carefully. In the silence, the rock spoke. "Who are you if you have no voice?" Bambur hesitated. He tried to answer, but no sound left his lips. Only a faint tone, so soft that even the birds fell silent for a moment. "What are you, if you're afraid to listen to yourself?" The rock asked once more. Bambur felt his bell trembling gently with each question. He knew these weren't ordinary questions. They were being asked from somewhere deeper. Maybe his heart? Maybe a soul he hadn't yet met? Then he remembered the words of Master TikTok, "You are not what you hear from others. You are what you choose when everything else falls silent." And so, Bambur sat beside the rock. He placed his hand on its cool surface and said nothing. But his silence was full of courage. After a moment, the bells on the rock began to tremble. One of them, tiny, shaped like a leaf, fell quietly into his hands. "This is the first of 3 sounds. You have heard yourself," the rock said, and then went silent. Bambur didn't know if all of it had truly happened. But the sound now resonating within him was the first one that didn't belong to the bell, but to himself. After leaving the bell rock, Bambur continued his journey. He carried with him the first sound, the one born in silence. But he knew it was only the beginning. The map Master TikTok had given him now pointed toward a meadow marked with the symbol of a smile. This must be the place of the second sound, he thought. The meadow was filled with children, but not ordinary ones. These were children made of leaves, sunlight, and dewdrops. Their laughter was gentle, like a breeze, and at the same time so genuine that it melted the shadows in the grass. Bambur approached slowly. He watched as one of the beings, a little girl with hair like daisy stems, helped the others shape bubbles from honey and foam. She saw Bambur and smiled. "Want to play?" "I don't know. I don't know how to laugh," he replied. "That's good," she said seriously, "because the laughter we learn tastes sweeter than the one that comes on its own." Then she handed him a bubble. Bambur touched it with his finger and pop! It burst with a soft sound like the laugh of a child seeing snow for the first time. Bambur laughed. Quietly, then louder, until he was laughing as if someone had just lifted a heavy sound off his heart. That laughter held a joy that demanded nothing in return. And then from the sky, a single drop fell, not of water, not of dew, but of light. It landed in his hand and turned into a tiny bell. "This is the second sound," whispered the girl. Bambur looked at her. "What's your name?" "Me? I don't have a name, but you can call me Giggle." And she vanished into the air, leaving behind only the echo of laughter. With 2 bells, one of silence, one of laughter, Bambur continued on his path. He felt something within him changing. It was no longer just about becoming a real boy. More and more, he wondered, who do I truly want to be? The map no longer led anywhere. Its lines had faded. The compass no longer moved. "This isn't a mistake," whispered a voice from within. "This is your trial. Now you must listen to yourself." Bambur walked through a valley of grey grass. There were no flowers, no laughter, no lights. Only silence, not the calm kind but a deep, thinking silence, as if it were asking its own questions. He sat down on a stone and closed his eyes. And then, he heard. Not a sound. Not a word. Just the resonance of who he was. Not a human, not just a bell. But someone who had learned to listen to the world, not to understand it, but to become a part of it. And in that moment, he began to hum. The melody was neither sad nor joyful. It was his. Born from the steps he had taken, from the people he had met, from questions without answers. He didn't know the words. But the words weren't needed. When he opened his eyes, the third bell, the smallest and brightest, lay on his lap. It hadn't fallen from the sky. No rock had whispered it. "You created it yourself," said something in his mind. "That's what it means to be real." The 3 bells in Bambur's hands glowed softly, each with a different light, one clear as silence, one golden like laughter, and the third shimmering with all the colors he didn't yet know how to name. Dusk was falling, and Bambur felt his journey was coming to an end. He returned to Mr. Maple's house, the very one who had once rung the bell in the old attic. The clockmaker looked at him and smiled gently. "You've returned." "Yes, but I think I'm not the same anymore," Bambur said quietly, holding out his hands with the bells. Mr. Maple sat down and gently patted the boy on the shoulder. "And that's exactly why you are real." At that moment, the 3 bells rose into the air and merged into one. They didn't disappear. They simply became a single heart, glowing beneath Bambur's ribs. No longer made of wood, no longer of silence, but made of something both soft and powerful, the courage to be yourself. That evening, Mr. Maple's entire house rang with a sound no one had ever heard before. It wasn't a melody from any clock. It was a song, Bambur's song. Not from notes, not from a book, just from him. Since then, the children in town would say that if you listen to the wind at night, you'll hear the soft chime of a bell, and then a quiet laugh, as if the world had just remembered that what is true doesn't always need to be seen right away. If you enjoyed this story, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. New magical tales are coming soon.